program right now. Good afternoon, and welcome to the special forum, Social Media, How Mayors Are Communicating with Their Constituents. I'm Brian Waller, the Mayor of Piscataway, New Jersey, and Chair of the Conference of Mayors Membership Committee. On behalf of the Membership Committee, I want to welcome you to this interactive session on social media. Before I introduce the moderator of this session, Conference CEO and Executive Director Tom Cochran, I would like to make a few comments about social media and mayors. As we all know, mayors communicate with their constituents through a variety of social networks, including Twitter, Facebook, blogs, LinkedIn, and many others. While we are acutely aware of the benefits this new way of communicating, we also know that it has some challenges. So today's session will focus on both the benefits and the challenges of social media, including a discussion on how we align our communication strategy with social media and technology strategies. And I want to, for the record, say the three mayors that are going to be up here, it's not going to be a scene of mayors unplugged, correct? Okay. If anything, you know, it's a wonderful time to be involved in government, especially with social media. However, it's also a time of ambiguity for elected officials on how to handling social media and new avenues of communicating with the residents out there. And you're going to hear some very good stories from the three mayors up here. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Tom Cochran. Tom?
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be part of this. This has been an issue that has been coming up in all of our meetings, and we're living with it. We remember not too long ago the Arab Spring and the Egypt uprising. We also remember the Blackberry Revolution in London, and then we had flash mobs in Philadelphia and also in Kansas City. And the situation is one that there are very, very, very positive things about how we communicate today. But there are also, as he says, challenges. Last year, we began to notice that there were a lot more recalls going on than we've had in many, many years. And so we did a documentary called Recall Fever, and it's a 28-minute film. I'm not going to show it to you today, but you might want to look at it. And the reason for that is that we found that sometimes your recall statutes are very, very low. And so we felt like as an organization that we should educate our members to say, look at your recall statutes. Because what's happening is there's a movement, and it has a pattern where you have a very wealthy person at the moment that you pass a referendum or do anything on an economic decision about your budget or taxes. In many cases, someone will emerge and start rolling with a recall. In Mayor Sullivan's case, it started the night that he was sworn in. In Mayor Pasquale's case, they spent over $240,000. That's what it cost to do this. He won by 75%. And what happens is there is a website that's created. It looks very good. It has an eagle on it, has a red, white, and blue flag, and it looks very legitimate. And I cannot really repeat some of the things that we found on some of the blogs that was going on these websites. And so all three of and then we had the situation in Chattanooga. So that is something that we need to understand has nothing to do with corruption. When we're talking about it, we're looking at cases when they start because of really tough decisions that mayors are having to make in this budget-cutting era that we live in. We had our meeting at Harvard, a new mayors at Harvard, and we put social media on the session. That's all it said. But we found, that we could have gone 3 hours, because what is happening is like, you run, you're tweeting, you're Facebooking, and now you're the mayor, and you govern your city, and you go to a grocery store, and somebody's very upset with you because you're not being their friend, or you didn't tweet them back. So, 20 years ago, it was letters. Why didn't you respond to the letter? Why didn't you respond to my invitation? So, when you become mayor, you lose your first name, and you're the mayor, and everybody wants a piece of you, a part of you, and they can get to you with this new social media. So we're going to have some mayors to discuss that. I thought I'd start off with Mayor McMillan. You were very good. You also served in the state senate or legislature?
In the State House.
State House. And so when we started talking about social media at Harvard, at JFK School, Institute of Politics, she was a little bit ahead of the mayors because she'd already been elected. So why don't you, if you could, give us your thoughts of what protocols that you could. Can you turn your mic on there, please?
It's on.
I think it's on. Is it on now?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's on.
Thank you, Tom. Social media, when you hear that topic, you wonder, what exactly do I need to do? And I think that Tom is exactly right. Part of the problem as new mayors that I think that you all run into, and actually those of you that have been around a while probably have this same problem, and that is, as he said, it's not about responding to a letter anymore. It's not about responding or answering a telephone call or taking the call back. He's exactly right. Now the problem you have is people want to be your friend. They want to like you. They want to know why you're not responding. And that was the first challenge that I had when I came into office is that there were a number of people in our community who live on Facebook. I've determined these people don't have jobs. They sit at home in front of their computer and let everybody know on Facebook exactly where they are and what they're doing and what groceries they're buying and everything else. And so they want to be my friend, and they want then for me to communicate directly with them on Facebook about every issue that is coming up and some issues that obviously you don't have any control over. So the first thing you have to do is make sure that you establish a protocol, because it can get out of hand. I thought, well, we have a website, I have an email, so if I just worry about responding to the 5,000 emails that I get just basically every month, or having somebody do that, I would be okay. I didn't realize that I actually had 5,000 friends on my Facebook account, and I can't have any more. You're limited to 5,000 under most Facebook accounts. So I thought, well, what do I do now? So the first thing you need to do is think about establishing a politician's page. You can establish a different page other than your own personal page, and those people can only like you on that page, so you don't have to worry about not responding to friend requests. But I still have my other page, and many of you who were elected, you had a Facebook page that you may have used in your campaign or you may have used personally, so you need to establish a protocol about which one you're going to use and which one you're going to respond to. I get messages every day on my personal Facebook page, and people use that as opposed to calling the office or sending me an email or writing me a letter. And so you have to really determine who's going to do it. I will tell you that it can be a full-time job for somebody in your office to respond to the social media request that you get. We had a big problem because people would Facebook me on my personal Facebook page to ask me to come give a speech. And of course, if I didn't see it, then I wasn't there. And then they would call and say, why wasn't the mayor there to give that speech? We sent her a message on Facebook. So, sometimes you have to be careful with that. So I would say the first thing you need to do is establish a protocol in your office. Have someone that's designated as the person who is going to check your Facebook page, who's going to check your politician's page, who's going to check your LinkedIn account, who's going to check your Twitter account, who's going to tweet for you. People start to wonder why you're not doing that. Now, I will tell you, the drawback is that once you start it, people start expecting it. If you're somebody who tweets often, they will expect you to do it every day. They will expect to know what you're doing through your tweets as opposed to sending out a press release. The other thing that I think you need to be careful of is don't let the social media drive your message. If you try to use only Facebook or only Twitter as your way to get your message out, you will fail because not everybody uses that and has that. So, and newspapers in your area, they will friend you and like you, but they still expect the traditional press release to be sent to them from your office. So you need to make sure that you do that. They want to have an interaction with you that's not online. They want to come to your office and ask you questions or do it over the telephone. So you need to be careful about that. It can literally be very overwhelming. When I was in the legislature, obviously I had people who did that for me. We had a state Facebook page and we had other things like that, so it wasn't an individual page, and I probably had more time to do that than I do now as mayor. But I am one of those people that, just like most of you, have computers and you have iPads and you have iPhones, and all of this is, it helps your ability to be able to do it. But I just caution and urge all the mayors to be careful, because once you start it, it doesn't stop. And then all of a sudden it becomes overwhelming in how you respond to it. So in our office, what we do is we have somebody who's in charge of it. We let people know that if they want me to come and speak or they want me to answer a question, they don't need to Facebook me and ask me that. They need to either send me an email or call the office, because that is the only way that we will respond. We use Facebook to really get the message out in addition to other things, and I think that's the way that it's probably best used, as opposed to you sitting at night and having intimate conversations with people back and forth on Facebook who are your friends, and it doesn't really help you get your message out in that case, because it just leads to arguments with people over why you took a certain position, this, that, and the other. So I would just say it's a wonderful tool. It has been we have used it extensively in our office. We put out press releases on Facebook. We put out press releases on Twitter. We use those things as a backup tool, but they're not the only tool. We still send the traditional press releases out to all the media contacts, but we also do it through Facebook. Another thing that I think is important for social media that can be very helpful to you is to use in the event of emergencies. For instance, if the electricity is out and people don't have the ability to get on to their computers to check the website or web page for your city, they can always go to their mobile phone and check Facebook. So you can let people know what they need to do in the event of an emergency through the Facebook account. Again, I just throw out the warning that you need to be careful, because it can become overwhelming. As I said, I had 5,000 friends on my Facebook account within 1 month of taking office. We then established a page, a politician's page, and I now have over 5,000 people that like the politician page. So we're constantly responding to those types of things as we move forward. So I just issue that word of caution, and I'm sure we can talk about it more.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. And we want questions. We want to have some interaction. Mayor Suttle, you got sworn in, and you thought you had won the game, right? You were the champion. But
I did.
But somebody wanted to play another game, right? So
and
talk
they
to
used
us a little bit.
Social media to broadcast that we should recall Mayor Suttle 1 hour after I was declared the victor, and it never stopped. But I want to share something with you from this perspective, because we have to build on the positives of where we go forward. Our universities and our colleges are putting out good graduates in journalism. And then they get to the marketplace, and it's a whole new ballgame. And that's our dilemma. So if we look at our newspapers, so many of them are going under, so many of them in financial distress. They're having difficulties in having a staff and then exploring stories, and much of it is sensationalism as they try to capture what little readers are out there still staying with the print media. Go to the television stations. They're all cutting back. They don't do travel. They do it from their stations, limited staff, new staff. And so this is the world that's going in. And when they're not covering the stories of your city, that means they're not covering your stories as a mayor or your administration. And thus, what we found out in the frustrations in my first 12 or so months, that I was second or third or fourth in my own stories. And now we basically are first, as we should be. But we changed strategies. And what we begin to do, instead of having one person engaged in my communication, I now have 4, and I have a series of consultants and other suppliers of what we need in order to communicate the message and stay ahead of it. The key is the social media. We do all the other things with the press conferences, press releases, the storylines that are worked their way to the newspapers and the television and so forth. But we are doing a lot more, as with our own website, as we film me at least once a week with a message on key subjects, and we post it. Everything on Twitter and Facebook, we do the same thing there. So we are, in essence, providing the media releases through a multiplicity of means. This is the planned social media side. But we also follow the blogs and we follow everything else. And I have a cadre of supporters as well as one staffer who is there to track what's going on in the unfriendly circles. Let's talk a little bit about the unplanned social media, because you have to be more on your toes. And this is, somebody is always filming. Somebody is always watching. My staff has me doing some exciting things, like rappelling a 25-story building. This last week, they had me dancing with the stars, and in the post-party event, I was on the dance floor with Miss Nebraska, Miss Omaha, and a few other of the ones who were already performing. But I noticed we were being filmed. That went out on the social media as well, and it was unplanned and unmonitored, and wherever it ended up. So you now have to watch what you do as you are in your own personal lives, whether you're in a store or an event or whatever. So there's 2 sides of this now that need to be carefully managed. I'm going to close with one more thing that we have found that has been extremely important for us in engaging our people through, in essence, this electronic world, and we started it last year so that we could get more of the message going with the true feelings and the true responses of our people when we posted our budgets. We started something called EngageOmaha.com. Get on it, take a look at it. It is a commercial product started by 2 young guys in Omaha. It now is going to other cities that are engaging this. This is a 24/7 way to engage your citizenry on their ideas and their responses to your parks, your police, your potholes, or whatever else. It is a tremendous communication tool, and we are learning so much from it that we are able to put into our final budgets and our final policies that we are running from our various departments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Wild was very instrumental in us having this panel, and we are combining positive things about social media and also negative. Mayor Wild, we had several conference calls, and we want to thank you for your being here and your leadership.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mayor Waller, for your work here in the membership committee. You know, I've been mayor for 5 years, and I've faced 2 recalls already. Unfortunately, they were both unsuccessful, and you know, there's basically 2 types of recalls. You know, there's the one that's put together by Joe Citizen that doesn't like something you did, and then there's the well-oiled machines that are waiting out there like they were for Mayor Suttle. Fortunately, both of mine were the Joe Citizens, and these things, you know, while there may not be well organized, that you end up spending a lot of your time, a lot of your staff time, and they're very damaging to your reputation. They're hard on your family. One of my recalls was filed by a college student in town that was doing it as a class project. So, and he was able to put together some language that the Election Commission approved, and they got petitions out. And the language was something that Mayor Wild laid 9 employees off balancing the budget. The second one was I had a group of homeowners. There was a big project coming into town, $15 million senior neighborhood, and the developer was buying all the houses in the area except for 4 of them, and they were paying well above market. So the 4 homeowners that weren't being offered to have their houses. So they came to me and they demanded that I use my powers and make this developer buy out their homes. Otherwise, they're going to launch a recall against me. So that's what they did. So, those things, they're very damaging. In the state of Michigan right now, we're one of the states that allow recall of state legislatures. And just in the past year, 40 of Michigan's 148 state lawmakers face recall efforts. So, it's out there. Only one of those was successfully recalled. There's a mayor in Michigan that's close to Detroit with 70,000 residents. He was actually, he was in the last election. He was on the ballot for recall because for budget cuts, he had to downsize his fire department. And the state firefighters launched a recall effort against him. And it's really set his community back. They haven't gotten anything accomplished in the last year. They've been worrying about this recall. So, with that said, I know the state of Michigan is looking at maybe some model legislation. And, I did consider coming to the conference and proposing that perhaps we take a look at what Michigan's doing. But, there's not much appetite out there with the public to be taking away rights right now. We see that with the Occupy movement. They're in a parking lot here. So, with that said, I guess my suggestion is if you're facing one of these recalls, and with the Joe Citizen one, it's probably a little bit easier to do this, but, you just got to run a efficient and transparent administration, like I know that we all do. You've got to be aggressive. Once you're elected, you can't lock yourself in the office. You still got to go to those dinners. You still got to get out to the schools and the neighborhoods. Basically, you got to keep that campaign mentality 365 days a year, because if not, these bloggers will do it for you. And their message isn't going to be the same as yours. So you got to define yourself, get the message out there. Social media's I think it's the best way to do it. And I'll close by saying, I read the other day that President Obama already has $240 million in his war chest. And he's probably well on the way to having $1 billion war chest for an election. He could buy airtime, TV time, cable time in every one of our communities. But what's he doing instead? He's using social media. So that should tell you something, because the guy that could afford to advertise his message any way he wants, this is the way that he's doing it. So if you haven't used it yet, and most of us probably already have, follow President Obama, see what he's doing, follow the mayors. You can get on and get the mayor's list and see there's several mayors here that are very, very good at it. It's a lot of, some mayors use it for personal messages, some use it to promote their cities, but probably a mix of that is the best. So I appreciate being here today.
Thank you, Mayor Weil. I just want to make two or three points before we open it up, and I want to hear from my membership chair. The reason that we're doing this with the membership committee is that you're having incredible budget problems, and yet the new media that we have makes it very, very easy to do a recall. And you've got to go home. If you haven't already examined, you say, it couldn't happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. Chattanooga is one of the most outstanding mayors in America. And so is the mayor of Omaha. And Don Plasquelik, he's been there, 40 years, right? So it could happen to you. Now, you've got to look at your you've got to look at the statute. Let me give you an example. In Akron, in the general election, there's not a Republican running against Don Plasquelik. So, it was like 15,000 people voted, maybe less than that. And you only had, Paul, you only had to have about 1,500 people to sign on. Well, Plasquelik is not a shrinking violet, and I just jokingly said you could go one bar one night and get enough people to sign something on him. But seriously, that threshold on that recall was outdated, and it had to be examined. In Chattanooga, you had a city ordinance and a state ordinance. He ended up in court, and his thing was all about having to raise taxes on a federally funded mandate, on a mandate cost. And there is a pattern that is here. And I don't want to connect the Tea Party to it, but the Tea Party came, and then we've seen a lot more recalls. I don't know, I haven't done any scientific approach on that, but you will find that you will find in many cases that somebody will be worth $5 or $6 million, and they say they are the Tea Party, and they turn around and start hiring kids to go out and get this thing going. So we have made it very clear that we believe that as an organization that you just can't have an election every 3 months. You know, when you win, when Denver lost the other night, they lost until next fall. You know, when Michigan State took my Bulldogs out, the season is over. So in America, you have elections, then you have another elections. You have championships, and that's the way it is. And again, this has nothing to do with corruption. These efforts are coming on false charges. Unbelievable stuff they've said, pictures, photographs. I mean, some of it you couldn't show your children in Chattanooga. And it's hurtful. It's hurtful to the family and everybody else around you. So the point is, look at those statutes. Make sure you understand them. And the other issue is that you can use in your arguments with your counsel or whatever is the cost to your city. Mayor Sutter, what do you think the cost was for your recall in Omaha? Do you have a price on it?
Well, it was published. It was somewhere around $1.6 million by the time they got done with everything on both sides. I had to raise $850 for a second time, and then the opposition had $7 million there, so it was kind of easy for them to write the checks.
And also, you have public money involved too, because they have to hold the elections, you know, and you have to do that. So those are the points I wanted to make. Mayor Waller, you want to make comments?
Or just before we open up, a couple quick comments on what Mayor McMillan was talking about. Protocol within the municipal government. Under tight budgets right now, as most of the mayors know, even though that's a very easy way to get your municipal message out, you really still have to pay somebody to monitor what's going out. And the major issue I know in our town, we're having my administrator and a couple of my key staffers, they just don't have the time to be doing that with all the other larger issues that are facing the towns out there, even though that's the right way to go governmentally. However, because of the stress of the cities and towns, there's not, unless you're an oil patch state, you know, a state or city where you maybe have a little extra revenue coming in one way or another, you just don't have that flexibility. I'll take it one step further about what Tom Cochran was talking about, you know, about the impact on families on this. That I know with my own children, and this goes out for all the other mayors, that they're sort of like an extension of the town hall to some extent, because you know how kids are. They'll say some wacky stuff on Facebook and on tweet or their text message, and I always remind my 3 children, I said, if I ever see anything crazy coming out there that's a reflection on town hall, I said, you don't even want to know what your mother's going to do to you. So, but, you know, we could say that jokingly, but in this day and age, the way thing goes on YouTube out there, and I always tell my own daughter, I said, in the home, it stays in the home. It's not for you to disseminate out there in the general public, because people think because that your children or whatever, it happens that the mayor or whomever, the elected, condones whatever they're saying, or it must be true because they're supporting it. So it's just not about the mayor or the staff now. It's about your individual family members, too. So that's another further challenge that we have to do. So I know, did you want to say anything else, Mike? Or do you want to open up?
Yeah, David Burns, you out there? Can you stand up? David is our social media person, and on the positive side, let us know. Dave, you have any comments?
We're putting him on the spot there.
I can't see you. It's light.
That's a lot of glare up here.
I'm supposed to put him on the spot. That's what we get paid for.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Just tell them what we're doing, and then we'll go open it up for questions. Give them a little bit of it. Yeah.
Just real briefly, I do a lot of the new media stuff for the Conference of Mayors, and I was in college when Facebook was created, and so I had my Facebook account from that, and so I'm one of those people that is practically unemployed who is on Facebook 24 hours a day. But the point is it's something I really believe in, and I think there's a great amount of power by using these tools. We've seen that kind of organization for recalls. We've seen organization for Tea Party. We've seen organization for Occupy. But it's really about, there's a great opportunity of moving beyond the campaign, move to governance, and applying this organization for what you can do in your cities. And there's a lot of potential there, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff that, is still waiting to be developed, still waiting to be tapped into. I mean, stuff changes so quickly. We, at the Conference of Mayors, we live streamed this whole event. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the sessions that we had, people were participating online and having great discussions, and they're really seeing some awesome stuff, and we're kind of selling this idea, I think, pretty successfully that mayors are making a difference, and that's something that we're able to do now because of these tools. And so we're doing stuff here with Twitter, we're doing stuff with Facebook, we're doing stuff on LinkedIn, we're doing stuff on Foursquare, the irony of mayors becoming mayors of places in town. But it's just something that's really cool. So hope you guys can get involved and take a look at some of these tools.
David, is Cory Booker the king of the tweets right now? Is he still the king?
Cory has a lot of fans. He, one of the things he does really well is kind of just what Mayor Weil was talking about, and that's blending your personal life with your actual business. And one of the things what's good about that is that it humanizes you as a person, it makes you more relatable, and there's a good connection with your constituents for when you're going to go up for re-election or just, using your bully pulpit in town.
Okay, thanks, David. If at this time, could we have any mayors that have any questions, please stand up and identify yourself and ask a question. Laura, how are you going? Go ahead. I see a couple hands. Somebody's got to stand up. Yeah.
Hi, Laura Friedman, City of Glendale. I have a comment and then I have a question. My comment is I've used Facebook quite a bit in my campaign, before that in my personal life, then in my campaign, and now it just grows and grows. And I look at other politicians' Facebook pages, and maybe it's just me, but when I look at politicians' Facebook pages, I find them really uninteresting and kind of about press releases, and I don't understand why anybody would read them. Right down to the photographs of them in their suits with the American flag. With my Facebook page, I use just pictures that people snap of me with a horse or me doing whatever. I try to revolve the photos, only if they're good and flattering. And I put a lot of personal information up. And I find that when I put city stuff up, I get one or two people who like it. When I put personal stuff up, like I just posted about my grandmother turning 99, and I had a video of her when she visited council last year. She looks like she's 70. I got like 65 comments. So those are the things that for me has brought people, constantly looking at my page. It's that sort of personal stuff. That's my comment. My question is, how do you all, and this is a question for the social media person as well, how do you all deal with people who leave negative comments on your pages? I'm lucky I haven't had that, but I've seen that on other people's pages, where either they leave a negative comment about you, about some of your policies. I assume that you leave those up, sort of in the, basis of transparency, but I'm wondering what your threshold is of removing comments. And also, what do you do about people who follow you, who post so many posts themselves that you can't even read your own wall? Do you unfriend them? How do you handle unfriending constituents?
Well, I know Kim would never unfriend somebody until after the election.
That's right. Yeah, and I think we try not to do that. I have never unfriended anybody. Part of the problem is that once you reach that limit on your personal page of 5,000, they send out a message saying you can't join this page. So we had to send out a message saying because of this limit, now we have a page. And so like the page as opposed to trying to friend me. So I don't have to worry about the friends anymore. I do agree with you about making sure that it's somewhat personal. I think that's why people use Facebook and use LinkedIn and use Twitter, is that it's much more personal than a website or sending you an email, because it seems like it's coming back from you. I find that a lot of people aren't sending me, they're just commenting on things, and sometimes they are negative, and we just leave them up because a lot of times they're posting it on their wall, and because they're my friend, it then becomes something that everybody sees and all the friends see also, and there's really nothing to do that I can do about that. So I just try to address it. I try to make it a habit not to respond to people's Facebook questions, because that leads into then everybody starting to use it like that, and then you have to respond to the negative ones as in addition to the positive ones. I mean, oftentimes people are not asking you a question, they just want to tell you something or at least let you know something or give their opinion. So I haven't really had to deal with the unfriending because I have so many friends now that I can't add anymore at this point. And so I don't worry about that. I look at the page and the people that like the page, and we try to use that as a way to get our message out oftentimes about what's going on in the city.
Mayor Wild, do you want to add something in?
You know, I had a follow-up to the mayor that just asked the question. When you asked about, you see some politicians that do a lot of personal stuff, and then there's other politicians that just do press releases on their Facebook page. I had this argument with my staff because I don't have a personal Facebook page, but the city has a Facebook page. And the staff that was tasked with keeping our Facebook page, they had personal Facebook pages, and they thought that the city's Facebook page should be operated the same way that they operate their personal. And we did it that way for a while, and I realized that we weren't, in my opinion, we weren't using it correctly. I think that if you have a personal, this is only my opinion, but if you have a personal Facebook page, that people would go there for personal information and pictures. But for the city, we do use it for our press releases, because what I realized was that I thought I was wasting a good tool by just putting, photo galleries of an event or something. We use it as a communications tool to keep the administration's message going. My staff still, every time we put a press release out that doesn't get a like or a friend or something, they say, "I told you so." But so what we've tried to do is strike a balance, and we do both. And we find residents that use it for information, and then there's others that look to see if there's pictures of them that made the city's Facebook page. So that's how we handled that.
Mayor Sotol?
Well, there's a fundamental in good marketing, good strategy of know, like, and trust. Know, like, and trust. And so we subject what we are doing to that critique on a periodic basis. Is what we're posting establishing a way to know the mayor? Is it a way to like the mayor? And is it a way to trust the mayor? And so this is a fundamental that I would ask you to carry back to your staffs to work on as well. It's a great, great beta test of everything you're doing if you do that on a periodic basis.
Could we add another question out in the audience from there?
I'll just add real quickly. On the aspect of the negative stuff that you get on your page, there are actually instances where I would encourage engagement in responding, because the worst thing you could possibly do is have this outlet where your community is reaching out to you, and then you're ignoring them, and everyone sees you're ignoring them, and that's where you kind of get this snowballing effect. Now, you don't have to engage in everything, because some of it's just going to be absolutely ridiculous, and we see that a little bit. I mean, when we had the protesters outside the last couple of days, they write a lot of things, and you don't want to respond to every single thing they say, because it'd just be a waste of our time. But, you also don't want to come off as being arrogant and above them and disconnected, because then that's just going to send the wrong message the other direction. And I was going to also add, we're talking about this issue of having a page for the city, having a personal page, and all these things. This is actually something that's kind of developing right now, that there's not necessarily a solid best practice for this yet. There's some cities it works real well to have a city page. Some it works really well for the mayor to have. You used to have that 5,000 limit. Now there's a thing called subscribe, which allows people to just get your updates, kind of like a city page or a politician page, but it's different that your staff can't also control it at the same time. But there's a lot of different layers, but there's a lot of kind of discovery and experimentation right now with what pathway you kind of go with these things. So it's interesting to hear everyone kind of talk about which way it works for them and which way it's going.
Thank you. I love that we're talking about this. It's something that comes
Can you just identify yourself so everybody...
Yes, I'm sorry. Mary Ann Lutz, Mayor of the City of Monrovia, California. This is a topic that I think is really important to all of us. One of the things I want to just ask a twist question is, not so much with Facebook or Twitter, but many of our cities have the patch.coms or an online newspaper. And what happens with the online newspaper is something will get posted, and even it's happening with the regular press with they're putting things online. An article will be posted, and then it starts in comments about it. And I have traditionally felt that I just let people make their comments. It may be a story about the city or even myself, and I just let them make their comments, but periodically people will stop me on the street and say, you know, you should set the record straight on that. So I thought, you know, they're right. I'm going to set the record straight. I did, and it backfired like nobody's business. So I want to get your opinion about commenting on those kind of websites that are kind of out of our control.
Well, that's a $100 question there. Yeah. You know, how do you control something like that? And I think that's one we're all going to be feeling through for the next decades to come. Kim, did you?
Yeah, I would just say that our newspaper in my city also does that same. They're online, and you have the ability to comment on articles. You used to could do it anonymously. They've now stopped that. But what I have found is it's the same 15 people that continue to comment on every article, and then they argue with each other on the comments. I mean, I read them so that I know what they're saying, but I do agree you got to be careful sometimes about responding to the comments. What I've tried to do is not respond directly to the comments, but use some of that when I give a speech or when I go to a civic club or when I make remarks somewhere to try to correct any inaccuracies that exist. I would also say part of the problem, too, is that because of the proliferation of social media, remember, you know, I don't know about all of y'all, but I do have a few council members. There's a few that don't like me, we'll put it that way. And so they use their own personal Facebook page to comment and post things that are negative about me. And so oftentimes, and then somebody will call me and say, did you see the post that council member so-and-so put up about you? And so then you run the risk of, well, do I comment back about that? How do I address that? Sometimes you have to let that stuff go and just move on with it and try to address it in other ways, because the worst thing that I think you can do is start getting into a social media war with a individual back and forth, because it will never stop if you start trying to respond to some of those things.
Well, how many times have you heard the phrase, the best offense is a good defense? Not true. The best offense is a better offense. And something I learned in marketing is what I applied my entire political career is simply this: know more about your opponents than they know about themselves. Make sure that your storylines and your credentials are equaling whatever they're doing, and then take their negatives and make them your positives. This is what you have to do, and you have to do it in the context of the game that gets played, because it is a giant chess game, and we're moving players on the board, and you have to have the offense to move the players better than anybody else, and that may be something you directly do, or it may be something that is indirectly done by others on your behalf.
Mayor Wild?
You know, on that one point that you mentioned, should you respond to that, in the Recall Fever video that Tom Cochran did, one of the parts that he did that really stuck with me, and I'm still trying to figure out how to do this the right way, but there's always going to be bloggers, and the thing that Tom said was that you need to get a good blogger working for you, you know, and bloggers speak like bloggers do. If you try to respond, I think you just can't win that one. But I think all of us, as this grows, we're going to need people working for us that are keeping an eye on this stuff. It's good that a lot of the major newspapers now do not allow these anonymous posts anymore. They are making you put your name. But I think all of us moving forward, we're going to have people on our team that are good at this blogging, so that they can turn that message around right away. But I think I just don't think it can be us. It's going to have to be somebody that can speak that talk, and so I think I can tell you I'm on the lookout for one. So
I think before we open it up to another question, the mayor, how many mayors tweet out there? Okay, how many have a Facebook page? And I'm sure everybody does texting, right? No texting. All right. Well, it's almost like we're back in high school.
Yeah.
You know, like, by the way. All right. I guess what Mayor, Dave, is there another mayor out there?
We have.
I believe Mayor Resigliano from Edison, New Jersey. Go ahead, Tony.
Thank you. This forum is perfect. A couple of things. I have made it a practice not to respond, only because in Edison and other environments, I'm sure, it may not even be 20 bloggers, and they may not be speaking to each other, but they may be speaking to themselves because they use several different names I found. Just during my campaign, there was an issue in Edison about a trade show coming to the Expo Center that had to do with, the trade show had to do with
Go ahead. You can say.
It had to do with sex materials that they sell in stores, and it was not there was no there was no prostitution or anything like that. Yeah. At any rate, and there was an ordinance that was drafted, and in order to say that you're opposed to it, but they can do whatever they want because it's away from a school, a park, blah blah blah. The response had to be yes, and that's how I voted. The very next day, someone in my opponent's camp put on YouTube that Mayor Resigliano, Councilwoman Resigliano, is in favor of pornography. Now, that very night, I was being installed into the Altar Rosary Society for my church. And all I could think of is, I just hope my pastor and the women that were part of the Altar Rosary Society were not looking at YouTube. And another thing that has been done, and again, it was purely political. There was a photo of a group. I was asked to be in the photo because I'm mayor. And a staff person on the opposing, well, not the opposing team, on the working for the candidates that were running for office, ended up putting somebody else's face in front of me. The only thing was the poor man had my hair. So, I mean, they do things like this. I think for the most part, we really have to just ignore a lot of it. And I agree with you. If you're not up on what the bloggers say or how they say it, just don't do it because it'll only come back to bite you. Thank you.
Before we have Kent, I see we have a couple other mayors.
Yeah, Lou Ogden, Mayor, Wellington, Oregon. The question, actually following up on Mayor Wild's comments about having a good blogger, or the comment about having your staff do your tweeting or do your Facebook posts, and then kind of bleeding over to the comment about whether it's a city website or a personal website. Facebook page. My question is this: when you have bloggers on your staff, or you have people tweeting on your behalf, or people posting on your Facebook posts, do you purport that as though that's you making those comments, or is it become evident that there's someone else doing those on your behalf? And there's, not that that's bad if it's clear that someone's speaking for the mayor, or obviously when you issue a press release, or perhaps even write an op-ed, people understand that that's been prepared, perhaps having staff editing or whatever. It's not the mayor speaking extemporaneously. Yet when you're tweeting, texting, or when you're posting on at least your individual Facebook page, I think most people have the presumption that's you talking. Mm-hmm. So how do you balance that workload and get the right messaging and yet still have that level of, sincerity, but you're actually having, particularly on a tweet, that, or someone then, does a response to that you're actually doing it yourself, or if you're not, how do you have that disclosure?
Mayor, there's no way that Cory Booker could tweet like he tweets unless somebody's doing it for him. I've been in. Now, is it Mayor Slay of St. Louis, David? Mayor Slay has a hashtag, right?
Yep.
That differentiates his people tweeting and him tweeting. So when you're reading those tweets coming in from St. Louis, you can look, and it's I can't remember what it is now.
It's his initials, FGS.
It's his initials with a hashtag. And so he has decided to identify his remarks by doing that. So you got tweeting from St. Louis from 2 or 3 people, but he also tweets, and he has that little identification. And his people know that.
Mayor.
Mark Stodler, Mayor of Little Rock. Just on this issue of responding to bloggers. First of all, bloggers usually, and unfortunately we do not have this truth serum that says you have to put your name on it. They come up with a moniker name that you have no idea who they are. But usually it's in response to something that is being posted on an online newspaper. We have one that is very popular in the political community. Everybody reads it. And my political supporters and staff, get mad at me when I do respond, and I've gotten to the point where I follow the Bill Clinton theory, which is never let an accusation go unanswered. Now, you have to have the facts. You have to be smarter than they are. And the question is not to get into a tit for tat, getting back and forth with somebody. But I think that at times, depending on how sensitive the issue is, you have to understand it's not just the bloggers who are talking to each other. There's a ton of people out there probably that are reading those online newspapers. Now, I've modified my approach a little bit in the sense that I usually will send back to the writer of the newspaper, the online newspaper, what my response is, and 50% of the time he'll put some follow up in there, which usually just provokes some more comments. So
Mayor Sadola brings up a really good point, and it gets into this. It's like the influence index, and it has to do with it's not just that you have this person who likes you on Facebook and follows you, or this person who is following you on Twitter and just reads your tweet. It's that sometimes they retweet it or they reshare on Facebook, and then their followers see it. And if they make a comment, then it's everyone else's news feed, what's going on your page. So you start getting this ripple effect where one thing you post, even though maybe 2 people are engaging with it, like where they're making a comment, it could really be about 10 people who are seeing it. So it's important to kind of look at these things. And there's a service called Clout, which basically puts a number to this, where it's basically your influence index, and it'll kind of tell you like what your reach is and what kind of, how you're sharing and things like that. But it's something to think about when you're doing these kinds of things, because it's not just about those immediate 2 people who've commented. It's about the greater group.
Go ahead, Patrick. You're the last one, Patrick, and then we're going to close it out real quick, okay?
Well, thanks a lot. I don't know if I'm on the north side of the room, but I wanted to acknowledge my good neighbor to the south of North Little Rock, Mayor Mark Stodler. So I decided we needed to have equal time for very briefly. But one of the things the Arkansas River goes between the 2 of us. But very briefly, I don't know how many of y'all have had a proliferation of Canada geese. And those geese poop a lot. And I've recently had a problem with that in our park. Mark's got a dog that ran him over on our side of the river, so we were trying to decide how we were going to deal with it. I'll be real quick without going into how we dealt with it, other than it became a social media issue. Save the geese. And the paper has a tendency to repeat numbers. They love numbers. And so you've got to be a little bit sensitive when you do things like this. There was an online petition about save the geese, don't let us use our controlled hunt. And the paper kept reporting over 1,000 people signed that online petition overnight. And we went and took a look at who those signatories were, and there were maybe 30 of them from our city, most of whom were outside the city, outside the state, and even some outside the country. So you've got wild goose chase.
Wild goose chase.
I won't go into 3 editorial cartoons, and a few issues later we did away with a controlled hunt, and now we're using dogs to chase them on the south side of the river. So, but what I'm saying is that, and then when we had people show up at our council meeting, there may have been a half a dozen. And I felt like this was one issue that was going to pack the council chambers. So you've got to be a little bit wary of when you've got the world literally as a potential signator on petitions or commenters or other input. That your community may not care as much as you seem to think it would, and so you need to kind of be geographically sensitive to what's going on out there.
With that, I want to make, as Patrick just mentioned, you have the world looking at it. For those mayors out there, please don't ignore your local public access channels. One of the spins that we did is now we're streaming live over the internet are the TV shows, the mayor show. And I didn't realize this. I evidently have a very large following in both Iraq and in Afghanistan. I can't figure that one out. But you can tag it now. So evidently there's people around the world watching what's going on in the U.S. at the governmental level. And which leads to another great thing come in Orlando. We should really, speaking with Tom about this, I want to thank the staff, Deborah, David, and Tom. We should really have another forum such as this down in Orlando, because this is a topic that will not go away. And the way technology is moving so quickly, we as officials need to keep up with it and how we're going to grapple with it with years to come.
Brian, if I could, I just wanted to say one thing, and that is to all of you mayors out there, and I know you probably know this, but just be aware now that everywhere you go, even if you think it is a private event, there will be somebody there with a camera that can record you, and you will see it on YouTube. I have seen that many, many times. I have been at lunch with somebody at what I thought was a private lunch, and somebody on the other side of the room was filming me eating with their little cell phone camera, and then it went on YouTube. So you just need to realize that there's not any more private conversations that you can have now, or go places that you think are private. I've had people film me at the grocery store and all kind of stuff, and it's all up on YouTube. So you'd be amazed at what people will.
And you're adhering to the wellness campaign, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, listen, let's give a round of applause to our panelists here, and thank you for. We look forward to seeing you at the Orlando convention down there. Thank you.
Great to see you.